All right, so we're going to talk about fermentation. This is the last part of chapter 6, and they kind of talk about alternative sources of energy, and one of which is fermentation. And so glycolysis can occur in the presence or absence of oxygen. But remember, when we get to oxidative phosphorylation, you need to have that oxygen. So if oxygen is present, we can take that NADH, right? And we can drop those electrons off and we can make ATP in oxidative phosphorylation. But if it's not, we are going to go through another process that will give us a little bit of energy in hopes of being able to sustain that living organism until they can get oxygen. So there are two common types of fermentation. One is lactic acid fermentation and the other is alcoholic. So with lactic acid fermentation, this happens with your muscles when you're working out and oxygen is limited. So this occurs in mammalian red blood cells, some bacteria like in yogurt. And what happens is we go through our glycolysis. So when we go through glycolysis, normally we would produce that a little bit of ATP. Remember the 2 ATPs. The problem is we can't continue on. We have to have NAD plus. But remember, if we don't have oxygen, I can't dump this off to get this back. So what happens is we're going to dump it back onto pyruvate. And that byproduct of that is lactic acid. So here's a better picture of this. So we have our glucose, and again, where we would make our ATP, and we're going to go ahead and reduce our NAD plus to NADH and make pyruvate. But this cannot go forward because there's no oxygen. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop those electrons back off. And so as you can see here, here's those 2 hydrogens that we're putting back on. Notice we do not have them here. And that's going to form lactate. And this is why, again, this is going to give us this back. So we're going to get this back so we can continue to make our 2 ATPs. Just gives us a little bit of energy to accomplish, hopefully, the task we need to do, whether it is to run from a predator or to catch a predator for dinner. So that is a way that we can get a little bit of energy, but it doesn't last long, especially in us in humans. And that's what leads to cramping and other things because you can't sustain this for long. Alcoholic fermentation is the same concept of taking those hydrogens and putting it back on pyruvate, except we get a different product. With this product, I know it's a little blurry. I tried to find the best picture here. What we're going to do is, again, we're going to dump those back on pyruvate, but we get a product called ethanol, which is alcohol, and CO2. It's carbonation. So that's alcoholic fermentation. And then I have a side-by-side comparison of the two, and you can see where it's the same concept of putting the NAD, the electrons, taking them back off of NADH. So we have more NAD plus available to make more ATP. The only thing different is the outcome. We make lactate or lactic acid, and they're going to make ethanol and CO2. So there's a little video. Also, it's on Canvas on measuring respiration in yeast. You guys did that. In lab. Right? And so again, some prokaryotes, including certain types of bacteria and archaea, use only anaerobic cell respiration. These are called, the type of archaea are methanogens, and they reduce carbon dioxide to methane to oxidize NADH. We also have some archaeans that reduce sulfate to hydrogen sulfide. So these are many of our anaerobic that are stinky and smelly, and they produce methane gas or that rotten egg smell. So, and that sulfur. Some connections to other metabolic pathways. So again, catabolic pathways for carbs, proteins, and lipids feed into glycolysis. So we were talking about just taking our sugar into glycolysis. But some amino acids we can put into pyruvate. When we break down those amino acids, we could put the product of that catabolic reaction into the preparatory step or the pyruvate oxidation step. And then fatty acids, we can break those into 2x2 carbon units and put them into citric acid with the with acetyl-CoA. And so we do have other types of foods that are biological macromolecules that we can feed into this metabolic pathway. So here's a picture of that catabolic. So when you eat that burger, which is now making me really hungry, we have proteins in there that those proteins can go into different parts of the cellular respiration, whether it's glycolysis or it can go into pyruvate oxidation or the citric acid cycle. And then we have our fats that also can be broken down and put into different parts of cellular respiration. And that is the end of chapter 6. Some of you guys are probably quite thankful. Like I said, I know this was going to be a hard one. And if you need any help, I have tons of videos in there to watch and I'm always available. All right. So good luck studying and I will see you in the next video or in class.